Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market.
Hey, welcome to Distribution Talk. This is Jason Bader, and you all are in a very rare moment where I get to do video. This is the first time I've ever really gone into a studio and done video. This is pretty awesome, actually. This is a pretty fantastic setup here, but I am here revisiting with work. I had an opportunity to interview Chris, it's been 2 years ago probably that you were on the show, and we talked, and obviously we're joined by Ryan. Actually, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. Please introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and then we'll get back to my little questions and commentary.
Yeah, Chris Van Ittersum, CEO, co-founder of the Worked family of companies, and also Ryan Carroll, our director of business development.
So you don't get to introduce yourself? He didn't get to introduce himself. Come on, man. All right.
This episode was brought to you by my friends at Profit2. A couple of years ago, I was introduced to Profit2 through a client who had been working with them for over a year. This client had been struggling with improving gross margins and was looking for a service to help them recapture some of their lost opportunities. Through their work with Profit2, it took about a year, but they were able to bump their gross margins by almost 2 points. For this distributor, and frankly for anyone in the business, this margin enhancement was a big deal. Beyond the pricing service, Profit2 has started helping clients look at cost and rebate management. If you want to discover hidden margin opportunities, come take a look at what Profit2 can do for you. Learn more at www.distributiontalk.com/profit2. That's profit with a number 2.
So, when we first talked, we talked about primarily a CRM functionality. I mean, that was kind of what you all were into.
Right.
Specific verticals that you were trying to focus on and really going down that trail. And I think one of the things that was very attractive at that point is you were really talking about how do we use CRM to extract data out of an ERP and utilize that going forward. And I think some of the really interesting things of that segment was the recommendations and the forward looking. And remember walking down the grocery aisle, you should buy this and this and this. And that's what the CRM should be doing for a sales rep. And I think we are still at a point where with CRM that sales reps still don't trust it. They don't say, hey, this is a tool for me. This is a tool for companies looking at me. And so anyway, that was the thrust of what you all were doing at that time. So back in June, we congregated again at the Applied AI for Distribution in Chicago. And I had an opportunity to listen to you all kind of introduce your sales agents or your AI agents in general. I mean, your agents will do all kinds of cool stuff. And it was just fascinating. It was just absolutely riveting. And I'm like, okay, we got to come back and talk again. So here we are a few months later, and let's talk a little bit about agents and, maybe dispel some myths about, what an agent is. Because again, we are seeing everybody talk about agents, just like everybody wants to play AI. Everybody wants to be, have an agent. And so we see these commercials, the sales agent, on Salesforce, and you've got comedic views of it, although we haven't actually seen that, but that's neither here nor there. But just tell me a little bit about this world and really what got you into it. What made you decide that, hey, this is where we're going to go, throw our cash at, throw our time, throw our attention, et cetera. So please take it away.
Yeah, I've spent probably 25 years now working on CRM technology and being a user of the CRM technology too. And, there's a lot of irony. The staff that uses a CRM, it's more of the feeling of dread having to use a system like that. You want the organization, but there's all these strings that come with it. And there's, these KPIs that have to be followed. And then there's this, the certain way that things need to be keyed in and entered in. And
sure,
you're always fighting kind of an uphill battle to get people to participate in that, right? And the leadership wants certain information out of it, and then the sales team doesn't necessarily want to provide that information, right? So you're always kind of fighting this uphill battle, right? And so where we started was, if we can find a way to get really valuable information in front of the team, they might want to use it then. If you can give them as much as they're giving to you, right, then it's a kind of a two-way street. And that's been our approach for the last, for several years. But we still run into this challenge where, if they can't do most of the task in that system, if they're doing order entry, or if they're doing quotes, or if they're taking notes and they've got to go to multiple systems, you're really fighting even that much more of an uphill battle to get them to participate, because they're already in another system. They're doing order entry over here. They're doing in every day there's more software getting introduced. We do these inventories with companies that we work with. It's not uncommon. They'll do an inventory. They've got 29 or 59 or 100 different apps that they're all running. And
their tech stack is awesome,
using? And they're all different.
Yeah, they're not doing a damn thing. Yeah, they don't know how to make them talk to each other, et cetera. No.
Yeah, so the advent of the AI agent is actually fascinating, because really what it's all about is finding those key tasks, those different things that you're going to do throughout the day, either that you are doing interacting internally with a company or interacting with a customer, or just trying to get information in and out of the system, and finding a way to offer that over chat and over voice, and making these very human-like experiences, right, where people want to participate. Classic example, one of my favorite examples is with outside sales. Yeah. And outside sales it's a great one to think about, because it's also the one where they have the biggest obstacles of using a CRM, right?
Absolutely.
They're in the field, they've got windshield time. When exactly in their day are they going to sit down and key everything into their laptop or key everything into their terminal, right? That's not happening. And so at best, you're getting maybe an end of day summary of what I hopefully remembered by that point, or maybe you're getting it once a week, like on a Friday or a Monday.
It absolutely is a burden and look, let's face it, the personality of a good outside sales rep is that details are not their forte, and so that's what a CRM's looking for, is details, and you've got a person who is not built to do that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a summary at best, and how fast can I get through this and go on to play golf or whatever, It's okay. I'm going to poke fun at salespeople. It's just one of my favorite things to do, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
We talk about the 80-20 rule in sales all the time, right? Yeah. And a lot of companies will have these key people who are, driving almost all the volume. There's like 2, 3, 4. Out of a team of 20 or 30 or 40 people, you've always got 5 people who are like the all-stars, and then there's everyone else, right? And what we find is, if you've got a fantastic memory and you're ultra charismatic and all these the attribution for a great sales rep is very long. So what we've got to do is figure out how do we distill that down to the common denominator to find a pattern where we can help those other people kind of achieve at the similar level. And what I found in my career over many years is some of the best team members in sales were the ones who had these almost like savant memory of what's going on within each of their accounts. What are they buying? What's their family life like?
Sure.
So it's the relationship, it's the personal details, but it's also all the product lines. And that person who can immediately recall, dozens and dozens of other conversations across many hundreds of different contacts, that is a very rare person. Right?
It is.
And that's why it's so rare to have somebody that's an ultra performer. So what we found is, if we can put an agent, when I say agent, and this terminology agent, what does that mean?
Well, absolutely.
What if you could just talk to your system? If you could just have a conversation with a computer that, do you want to talk to a computer? No, but you want information out of the system. You want to know what's going on with this account. If I'm on my way to an account, what should I be talking about when I get there? What was the conversation last time? What are my follow-ups that I need to do? These are questions, they're very basic questions that you could ask. And if you could talk to a CSR back at the office, they could give you the detail. You can talk to an agent and they can give you that detail. Right? So now you can get scale. You can accomplish scale. And then these OSRs that are on the road and they've got the windshield time, they love talking. They really enjoy, they're on the phone, or they're talking to, whether it be their family or whether it be contacts, all day long. And they really enjoy that.
Sure.
What they don't enjoy is sitting in front of a computer and getting information in and out.
And banging keystrokes, all that kind of stuff. And I think what you're really, driving to, and again, this was the original, dream of CRM, was we were going to make that CRM a tool for the salesperson to be able to be more successful and to become that savant or whatnot. But that's not reality. I mean, let's just face it. Again, in order for that to happen, then there has to be that input.
Yeah.
And there's that reluctance, because it's like, well, what do I get out of this deal? And I think that's the thing that has made CRMs kind of lackluster or failed in many, many implementations, But if you can make it easy, and I think that's what we're really driving to, is make it as easy as humanly possible, make it enjoyable to actually interact with that CRM function, or again, this is the agent as the bridge, to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the agent is plugged into the data, that's when the agent can actually become the savant for the salesperson. So
Absolutely.
Now they don't have to be a savant, which is it's very difficult.
Well, I think it can be great for newer reps, newer reps who maybe don't have the years of experience or the product knowledge or situational knowledge and things like that. Now the agent is extracting information not only from an ERP, for example, but also from a lot of different data sources, and can be that quick educator. And so all of a sudden, this this salesperson looks pretty dang smart, and they look pretty seasoned,
right,
when they may only be 6 to 8 months out of the blocks.
Right. It's almost impossible to try and recall thousands of SKUs, and then even to remember. I mean, a lot of the salespeople's customers are ordering weekly.
Yeah.
To be able to pinpoint what did they buy last week, what did they leave off the order from last week, to try and keep up with that, and what the quantities of those items are.
Sure.
It's almost impossible. They're put in an impossible situation.
Right, to be that savant.
Yes.
Absolutely impossible. I would agree with you. I mean, I think that's, and I think even weekly is a little bit of a stretch. I mean, in many cases, a lot of these certain types of, if I were to look at the contractor-based verticals in distribution, it's daily. I mean, that is a daily, so you're talking about so many more transactions to try to sift through at all times. And I think you're right. It's an impossible task. Absolutely impossible task there. So let me take a step back here. So you all got deep in this. I mean, you went deep in this thing. You got a little bit out there, a little bit weird, a little geeky about this stuff, and you got really excited about it, which is, I think it's fascinating as well. Tell me a little bit of the difference, because I think sometimes people confuse that agent that you're talking about with a chat bot, or, hey, welcome back, Jason Bader. I recognize your phone number. It's like, what department would you like to go to today? Well, those drive me crazy. I want nothing to do with those. So how is an agent different than that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what most people think about when they think about an agent is just, a computer voice.
Yeah.
And they don't really understand all the technicals behind it. And what we normally hear, everyone is fascinated about right now is sales agents that are going to do inbound, outbound, and very surface level. That's what normally is discussed. They say, oh, I can get this thing to make calls and I'll generate appointments for you.
Right.
Can you go beyond that though? Can you have it do order entry? Can you have it do collections? Can you have it do confirmations on POs? Can you have it place POs? Can you have it do so when you start thinking about the different use cases, I think that the difference that we found is the functionality. If you can tie the different types of functionality in your system to the capabilities of the agent, then the agent becomes very much like what an individual in your office is going to be doing. And so you can really map out what does it look like to do certain tasks. And, I don't like to look at it in terms of human capital replacement. I don't look at it this way. That comes up all the time. People will say, well, are we going to lose our jobs? Or companies sometimes they want to find a way to become more lean. But really what we find they want to do is they want to grow. They want to, sustain, and they want to do well with what they have. And they don't want to have to double the sales team every time that they've made subtle changes in their business, right? Or they don't need to double the CSR team every time they've made subtle changes. So having these type of agents to be able to assist with some of those key tasks and get rid of the busy work. The people don't actually like the busy work. They like the fun part of the job, right? That part where, you're thinking about strategy and you're thinking about, what's the best way to have these conversations and what should I talk about next? And those kind of conversations are very fun. But the monotony of, okay, can you call this vendor and see if they're going to give the stuff on time?
Sure.
Can you make sure that this package was delivered at the right, spot? These are not the calls that we love to make, right? So you can actually offload a lot of that busy work to the agent team and let your human capital do what they're best at, which is build those, those charismatic relationships with the customer. Put a face to a name for your business and your label.
Sure.
And those are the things that your customers want, right? So the nature of the work can actually change over time.
Well, yeah, and you allow for creativity. I mean, I think, the greatest untapped asset any of us have in organizations is this collective creativity in the people that work with us and for us. And how do we drag that out? Well, we got to give them time to be creative. And we actually have to champion the thought that thinking time is really doing work. It's not just, push this, push over there. I think that's a big struggle with a lot of folks is that, thinking time or strategy time is actually work, not just doing. And everybody's so accustomed to doing. Well, let's let the agent, in this case, let's let them do some doing. And then we can get back to the thinking side. So,
yeah, you could get to the point where the individuals on your team are doing a lot more orchestration, right? And that's the kind of thing where, in a normal business, you've got these leaders who are kind of the orchestrators and then everyone else that's working and doing those tasks. But what you're able to do with agents is make more of the team members orchestrators, and they've got a team of agents now doing a lot of tasks, underneath them. So there's an immediate type of scaling that you can get out of a business that you've never seen as possible.
It gives you an incredible ability to scale at peak times as well, because there's also just times in business where you've got you know that every day from maybe noon to 1 you're going to be absolutely bombarded with calls, and so you can only, with human capital, you can only have so many people on the phone at once. So this is where having the agent come in and help, they can scale across. You got 100 people calling in, you got a team of 10, you can take all 100 calls. And if the agent can likely handle 80 to 90% of what's needed with all those calls coming in, and then you have your human team that can manage the queue that if things need to escalate, right, then it can go to that team. So now you're able to scale up and down instantly for peak times.
This episode of Distribution Talk is sponsored by InSQL Distribution Software. InSQL is a fully functional distribution-based software package, and these folks do it very well at a price point many smaller distributors can afford. Another thing I like about this company is they do it all in-house. They take on these applications and build them into the platform using state-of-the-art Microsoft technology. No third-party bolt-ons for them. This is important because when you need technical assistance, they are the single point of contact. If you're ready to step up to a fully loaded, scalable distribution package at an affordable price, look no further than InSQL Distribution Software at www.insql.com. That's INXSQL.com.
So we talked a lot about salespeople, and doing task work for salespeople and taking the burden off of certain tasks. But, let's look at the distribution world in general. I mean, there's a whole lot of moving parts inside. I know sales gets all the accolades and they're the prima donnas and they're the pretty kids of the dance. But, there's a whole lot of people inside that make a distribution company function. What are some of the things an agent could do? Just spitballing, some of the use cases. What could an agent do to help the rest of the operation, maybe even the financial back end and things like that?
I mean, you name it in terms of, especially, I really like the integrations with jobs that are done through relationship, right? And so this, actually, it's ironic because a couple of years ago when we had this conversation, I would tell you, hey, you really got to have the human in the loop every single one of those conversations. The relationship is really key and critical. And if you just degrade that, you're going to have some real problems. I still believe that if you degrade the relationship, you're going to have real problems.
Right.
But if you can put an agent in place that's going to be really valuable, either in information seeking or in information giving, it turns out that both your vendors and your customers really enjoy that experience. It comes down to, is the agent performing well? And if the agent is performing well, you actually, if you think about it, the times that you're most annoyed when you talk to an agent on the phone and you're like, oh my gosh, I got another, I got this bot,
Another prompt.
It's because of the capabilities of it. You just make this natural assumption that the capabilities are very poor. It's not going to be able to help you with what you need. I'm going to need to talk to a person, so just get me to the person,
Right.
That's what everyone wants.
Agent, hit zero.
Exactly.
Agent, hit zero.
Exactly.
How fast can I do this?
And if you think about it, if you really start thinking about it, it's not because you want to talk to the person. It's just because you want your stuff dealt with now and you don't want to wait and you don't think that this thing has the capability, right? So imagine a phenomenon where it did have the capability, right? And then you could ask these questions. You don't have to wait on hold. We've got customers that we come into, they've got 26-minute hold times Customers don't want to wait this long.
There's no way. Yeah,
right?
absolutely no way.
So you're losing sales because you can't pick up the phone. And there's a lot of this going on. So if you can have a very capable agent take a lot of, whether it be surface information or whether it be even very detailed information and collect it, you can now shift the burden of a lot of those calls to something that can do that very, very well. And you get the response. So the customer is able to have that conversation very quickly, or the vendor is able to have that conversation very quickly, right? If someone's asking you for a status and it's in your system, why do you need to have a person take that call and say, here's the status, and read it off the screen?
Right.
The agent can do this very, very well. So when I start looking at those tasks, it's the where do you have a lot of volume, where it's not so much about the relationship, but it's more about transactional, right? If you're taking calls and people are asking about, deliveries, if you're taking calls, if you need to place calls to your vendors and say, hey, what's going on with the status of this POs, which happens all day. Yeah. Purchasing teams are talking to the vendors all day long just to say, where's my order? Why didn't you ship this yet? Oh, why didn't you tell me that you updated the time and it's going to be another week, right? Hey, what's going on with pricing on this one? It's out of whack. Imagine all the scenarios where you're having those basic conversations. And
it takes so much of their day. I mean, so many hours in the day, with these pretty mundane, the lag really is how soon can I get somebody on the phone who actually knows what they're talking about.
100%.
That is the lag.
And are they informed enough to be able to find the information that I need quickly, right? That the agent has right at its fingertips, right? So if the agent is extremely familiar with all of your data, how it's arranged, what it all looks like, it can find that information very quickly, right? So your delays are down to zero. It's just what are the capabilities? So you start layering more and more capabilities in, and you can release these into departments, whether it be CSR team, whether it be your vendor purchasing, management team, whether it be your collections team, and your sales team becomes a great part of it, but it's not the only part. Literally every facet of the business can get a lot of value out of this.
100%. I mean, I'm thinking about accounts receivable, that credit department. And not only talking with customers about, past due invoices, things like that, but what about going out and doing original credit checks or applications and things like that? Really, the amount of time that requires is, again, slightly ridiculous, when they could actually be spending time analyzing accounts and making human decisions as to, should we move that credit limit a little bit or that line of credit a little bit, or what should we be doing here? Or do I need to go out and have a personal visit with a customer to talk about their, when do they pay and all of those things that require a nice human visit, a face-to-face visit, because that's how you get paid in distribution is you have a face-to-face relationship with the person who writes the check on the other side. So, yeah, I think that there is that application out there. And again, sales is always the sexy side, so we always say, yep, we're building these agents for sales, but there's other people there. I mean, there's other parts of this that are that should be considered, I think, when you are starting down this trail.
The collections side is actually fascinating because a lot of what happens in the collections team is busy work, even busy work that they don't want to do. They actually enjoy having the conversations with the customer and building the relationships and kind of trying to figure out how they can manage. Hey, if you owe this balance and you can't pay it today, let's figure this out. They want to be an advocate for the customer's success, and you want those kind of calls happening. But, the basic, customer onboarding where they just key in a bunch of data into the system and now you've got a default credit limit. There's so many things that is just paper pushing that no one likes, right? And if they could offload the busy work to the agent, that would be great. And if they can do basic status checking, with customers or with internal teams, a frequent thing that happens all the time, and we've talked about this recently, is sales teams and how much time they spend internally talking to their own team members to say, hey, can I get a credit acceptance on this one? Or can I get an exception to this? Or, hey, what's going on with this one? Will you allow me to do this? And most of the decisioning for that just follows a rubric. It's, it's not a just judgment call. It gets to be a judgment call, but they're just following rules at the end of the day, right? So can you have that conversation a different way? Yes, it turns out you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and think about the labor that's attached to those activities. If they're spending so much time talking to their internal people, well, number one, they're missing sales hours. They're missing revenue generating hours. But you're basically taking labor of both of those teams when you have those types of conversations. And if that can be mitigated somehow, i.e. using an agent, I mean, that's a huge win for an organization. Absolutely huge.
Ryan and I, we had a conversation recently about, a CSR team and their ability to scale. What was going on? We had an account that had a certain number of team members and they were looking at doubling their business. This was a huge, value play for them.
Yeah, so for them, I mean, they're looking at, they have a team that's up close to 100 people in the field. They have, about one CSR, per 10 people or so to support. And, they have big growth goals. They want to double this team in the next year or two. So what does that mean from SG&A standpoint? I mean, it's a lot of funds that would be tied up to scale, not only having to bring in more salespeople, but then the support staff for that. So you could bring in the agent, and the agents could essentially help. You could double that CSR team and save 70% on what it would cost to bring in that team full time. So now that scale bottleneck is gone.
Well, and then also, where am I going to find those knowledgeable bodies?
Right.
Where am I going to get them? That's one of the biggest challenges I see in a lot of my clients.
Well, and you've got turnover and training, and there's a lot of factors and things that go into bringing that team, and it's not just as easy as it's not always as simple as the dollars, right? There's a lot more that goes into that, and plus you look at what the agent can do. The agent's working a perfect 8-hour day. Right. It doesn't take breaks. It's going to work your 8 hours, and you're only paying for the hours that you need. Right. Versus, someone who might really only give you about 6 productive hours.
Oh, at best. At best. Come on, let's be realistic here. I mean, and no disparaging, because I do love the people that are in those roles, but let's just be honest about what just throughout the day you've got peak mental hours, and then you have decline, and and I think now you've got Steady Eddie here. Agent Agent Ryan is going to go out there. Agent Ryan is That's Steady right. Eddie. Doesn't call out, doesn't need a smoke break.
No. Well, and there's other efficiencies too that you can gain, because everyone finds that there's certain times of the day that are prime for certain activities, right?
Right.
Certain types of outreach, maybe, and it doesn't matter what department, you're going to find that we're most effective getting somebody on the phone from these hours. Right. Well, if your team's only a certain size, you can only make so many calls during those hours. But with the agent 100%. Team, you can scale up and get all the calls in when they're most likely to be answered. Right. So another just really nice efficiency where your team almost gets to put the superhero cape on, and they can reach so many more people during the prime time hours.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you all have done, because I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. I mean, tell me a little bit about, some of these sales agent plays that you have put together. What can it do? I mean, what can this thing do? I mean, let's figure that out.
It's actually really exciting. So the way that I like to look at it is, there's a couple different types of mainstream types of calls that would get done by an agent, right? Or the interactions with a customer. But what we like to do is create really valuable, types of calls, the same way that a sales team member would be trying to do, right? So you don't want to be a burden or a bother to your customer, but there are certain things that you want to reach out and have that conversation about. You've got certain specials, you've got, repeat buys, you've got things that you can see in the data, like, hey, I noticed that you're buying this, but that means did you know that we also sell this? Because everyone that I have that's buying that is buying this, right? So all those kind of suggested selling opportunities that you wish were at your fingertips, the agent has all this information. So we like to create a situation where we're doing, promotional outreach, repeat buys, reorders, things that people want. We talked about this before the last time we met. If the grocery store called you to get your order, how would that conversation go?
Right.
And that's largely how we've designed things like this is, when the agent calls, do you welcome that call because the information you're getting from it is really valuable? Right.
You're probably a little creeped out the first time,
Absolutely.
but then, you start to understand that this is actually a pretty decent service. I mean, and that's really what these folks are in the business of, is being service minded. And, how am I going to be a maximum service to that customer? How am I going to make their life easier?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And when it comes to prospecting, we try to do something very similar, which is add a lot of value. We try to do, create a situation where you're breaking the ice in a very positive way. And we do promotion development with our customers. So what kind of, what are the promotions that you're offering right now for your new business? What can you do when you're opening up a geography, or you're opening up, are there specials? Are Are there coupons? Are there incentives? Are there various things? But it's a very similar type of strategy. And one thing to note, I want to make sure that we talk about is the agent doesn't have to be a savant perfect at everything, right? There's a lot of people ask us, what does it happen? What happens when they ask the question to the agent and doesn't know the answer? And it's a fascinating question. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens when they ask your sales rep a question they don't know the answer? And they think about that and they're like, oh, well, I guess, what would they do? And I'm like, well,
I don't know.
They're going to say, listen,
I will figure this out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to get that information for you and I'm going to circle back. But
right.
here's the thing the agent does. It always circles back.
Yes.
Right. Whereas the person is going to maybe take that down. Maybe that
Right.
makes it to somewhere.
Right.
Is that going to go into the CRM? Come on,
Right.
guys. We know what's happening in the CRM.
So these outbound calls that you all are referring to, is it text? Is it email? Or now is it voice? What are you envisioning here?
So we think that voice is actually the least obstacle in a business to business setting, right? Most of these buyers and sellers at these companies are on the phone a lot. It's just a natural course of their business. It's one of the main ways that they're going to answer the business phones.
Okay.
So that works really, really well. But if you make it multimodal, if you're doing text when you need to, if you're doing
Right.
email and you're doing calls, it's a perfect situation. It's the same thing that you'd want your sales reps doing. A lot of people are talking over Facebook Messenger, or they're talking over text, or they're talking over LinkedIn. So if you can go multimodal with the agent infrastructure, that's a big recommendation that we have. But voice has to be a big component. Yeah. And that's a component that it's kind of critical. If you can get them on the phone, right, and they're used to being on the phone, you're not interrupting the normal course of business.
So, all right, I want to circle back on voice. Give me a second. Okay, you talked about having these agents do certain types of sales call or sales outreach. You said promotions and some other things like this. Well, I think you guys both know, I've shared it with you enough times that, dormant accounts drive me crazy. This is the one pet peeve. I swear if I can help people solve this one, I am going to die a happy man. That literally, you look at any distributor that you work with, and they've got hundreds, if not thousands, of accounts that they have, pre-qualified. They have lines of credit. They were buying at one time, and for some reason they stopped buying 6 months ago, 12 months ago, et cetera. So still on the books. And I think this is that perfect opportunity for a non-human to see if we can get, resurrect that business. And so, I take it that's something that you all have looked at and gone down the trail with. Yeah,
account reactivation is actually something that most good sales managers want their human team to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? So it's one of the main things. If you can bring
in
a veteran sales manager and try and, get it, come in and bring breathe some fresh air into a company, it's one of the first things they look at. They look at all of the history and like, why are these accounts not buying anymore? They used to buy from us, right?
We need to go talk to them.
Who stopped calling on this guy? Oh, well, this guy transitioned out and, he had the relationship and so nobody else,
Right.
There is so much low-hanging fruit on the customer base that you already have, and that if you just would continue to maintain that business and not lose it, there's this regression of your customers that's happening all the time. Well, it doesn't have to.
No.
It's just because we're letting it happen, right? So it's a big thing to say, this is even in the CRM when we provide, hey, you should call these customers because they have, these issues. Well, it turns out if you can just have, if it's on the CRM screen, then the agent knows this is going on, right? And we can have those calls and emails and so on going on and developing and driving that business to the sales team.
I think in that utopian world, we want that inside salesperson or that customer service person. Hey, can you carve out, and do 6 calls a day to these dormant accounts? And it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
And I think it ultimately comes back to the type of personality it is. Great when somebody calls inbound call. They can have wonderful conversations, insightful conversations. They can lead people to product solutions and everything. But there's a barrier with that outbound call because it's less predictable and they don't know what they're going to be getting themselves into. So I have found, we've tried this in so many different clients and just it's never gone anywhere. It's not that it's the hours in the day. There's enough time to make 6 phone calls. It's just there is a mental barrier.
They're the hard calls.
They are the hard calls. You
don't know what to expect.
That's right.
You don't
That's
know.
Right.
Is this,
even though you're bringing 100% valuable information, there is a mental barrier. And that's okay. You know, not everybody has got certain skills, or, you know, their personalities are wired differently. But yeah, I think that's the one that just drives me crazy.
What are the type of calls you like to make versus the ones you don't like to make?
Well, I mean, whenever you're making a call into a situation where you don't understand what's happening, right? You've essentially you've seen your orders go down. You feel like you've almost been ghosted by this account, right? And so at that point, that's a difficult call to make. You've reached out a few times, you've tried, you feel like you can't break through, but that's where the agent doesn't care if somebody's upset. They don't care if maybe they just were on vacation for a month and they find out that they just came back. The agent's ready to handle any of that. It takes emotion right out of that. So there's no fear, there's no emotion. And what's interesting is too, in talking to a lot of companies that we've had discussions about this with, and just somewhat anecdotally, even calls that I get, we're all starting to get some kind of calls that are coming in, right? That we're all taking. But it's interesting. The person who's having a conversation with an agent a lot of times seemingly is almost more honest, and will have an honest conversation with an agent and say things that maybe they wouldn't have said to a person, because they know that they're not going to get the reaction, right? And that they can be honest. Oh, well, yeah, actually, you know what? I want you to go back and tell John that I'm not ordering because of X, Y, and Z, and these are the things that I've been dealing with you guys. So have John call me back, see if you guys can figure this out, and maybe we'll do business again.
I'm tired of your sales rep flicking cigarette butts into my parking lot every time they come and visit us. I mean, stuff that they probably would have a difficult time saying to an individual.
Correct. Yeah. Or that person that's doing
Or
this
the
thing.
person, right.
I'm just not going to take his call because I don't like this guy.
Right. I don't like this guy. I don't like this guy. And you're right. Agent Ryan has no emotion. Agent Ryan doesn't get hurt. Feelings. And I think there's where you get in trouble.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, it's a great scenario, and I love that. I think many of the distributors I work with could recognize that pretty quickly. If you presented that and said, hey, don't give me your big cool guys, just give me the dormant accounts. Just let me play in that neighborhood and see if I can bring in a couple nickels. And it's a very low risk trial, because they ain't buying from you anyway. Who cares?
Yep.
If they don't like the agent, you haven't lost anything.
It's softball for the agent, and it's a great way to show value right away. It's one of the first things we look to do is, hey, where are you already just low-hanging fruit opportunities that you can get, hit it out of the park.
So you've done this, and you've started to build these agents. Let's take a look at a demo. I mean, I know that you've started down this trail and what you've built. So if we could we just get a little demo?
Sure. Let me pull this up here real quick. So
perfect.
Let's go with the use case that we discussed a little bit earlier, where this is one of the most popular things that we get customers are asking for is having an agent that can help with the outside sales team.
Absolutely.
This is one of their biggest struggles, is to get outside sales to use any type of technology, put any type of data into a system.
Sure.
Right? So we've built out an agent that can support the outside salesperson. So I'm going to go ahead and demo this. So imagine that I'm sitting in my car right now, and I'm let's say I'm leaving one appointment and I'm going to head to another, and I'm going to call my agent, and I'm going to task it with some things here. So let me kind of role play through this real quick. Make sure we can hear this.
Hi Ryan, how can I help?
Hey, I'm just leaving Greenville Supply, and I need to put a note on file. Can you help me do that?
Sure thing, Ryan. What's the note you'd like me to add for Greenville Supply?
I need to add a note to create a quote for them that I need to present next Thursday.
Okay, I've put that note on file for Greenville Supply. Anything else you need on this account?
No, I'm all set with that one, but now I'm headed over to Spartanburg Wholesale, and I really need to know what my last 90 days of sales looks like with this account. Where are we at?
All right, Ryan, over the past 90 days, Spartanburg Wholesale has done about $72,275.30 across 84 different products. Their mix is roughly 45% electrical supplies, 30% HVAC equipment, and 25% plumbing supplies. Quick heads up, Sarah Jenkins, your main contact, just mentioned her son is starting college soon, so that might be a good combo starter. Also, there's an opportunity with our industrial maintenance supplies. They haven't ordered any yet, but tons of similar accounts are buying a lot of those lately. Need anything else on Spartanburg Wholesale?
Perfect. Actually, is there any products at risk that I should know about before I go in there?
Yeah, Ryan, there's one thing to keep an eye on. Their rubber gasket orders are down about 65% from the last quarter. They used to order pretty regularly, but haven't placed anything in the past 5 weeks. Could be worth checking if they found another supplier or if there's any issue on their end. Want me to add that to your notes for Spartanburg Wholesale?
Actually, you know what I want you to do? I want you to take the opportunity and the risk, and can you just shoot that to me in an email so I can check that before I walk in the door?
I'll send that Spartanburg Wholesale opportunity and risk summary to you, Ryan. Is that right?
Perfect.
Great, Ryan. I've sent that opportunity and risk summary for Spartanburg Wholesale to your email. Anything else you want to prep before your visit?
No, I think that's all I need for now.
So pretty natural.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. Up to now, we've been talking about what agents can do inside distribution. When we come back for part 2, I want to go somewhere a little weirder and a little more interesting, because this next part isn't about tools anymore. It's about identity, ownership, and what happens when an agent starts sounding a lot like you. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Impostor Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, the Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.